What if I told you that one man born in a simple log cabin, with less than a year of formal education, would rise to become the most revered leader in American history? A man who faced insurmountable odds, navigated a nation through its darkest hour, and ultimately paid the ultimate price for his unwavering beliefs. This is the extraordinary life of Abraham Lincoln, a story of resilience, sacrifice, and unshakable determination. Stay with us as we uncover the journey of the 16th President of the United States, the man who held a fractured country together and reshaped the course of history forever. On an EARLY life and Hugh Bill B.J. 9Gs. Abraham Lincoln was born on February 12, 1809, in a small one-room log cabin in Hardin County, Kentucky, now LaRue County. His parents, Thomas and Nancy Lincoln, were hard-working pioneers, but life was anything but easy. The Lincolns lived in poverty, and Abraham's early years were filled with hardships, including the tragic loss of his mother when he was just 9 years old. Despite having little access to formal education, young Lincoln developed a deep love for learning. He borrowed books from neighbors, read by candlelight, and honed his skills in writing and public speaking. His thirst for knowledge would become one of his defining traits, a characteristic that would propel him from obscurity to greatness. Additionally, Lincoln's father, Thomas, was a firm believer in hard work. Young Abraham was often tasked with physically demanding labor, including splitting logs for fences, a skill that later earned him the nickname rail splitter. As a child, Lincoln was deeply influenced by moral and religious values. Although his family was not strictly religious, he was exposed to various Christian teachings, which shaped his views on justice, equality, and compassion. Lincoln's early experiences with loss extended beyond his mother's passing. His sister, Sarah, who was a guiding figure in his life, died during childbirth in 1828. These losses instilled in him a deep sense of resilience and empathy. Despite growing up in financial hardship, Lincoln developed a keen sense of humor and storytelling. He would often entertain his family and neighbors with witty anecdotes and speeches, a talent that later helped him connect with voters and political allies. 2. Lincoln's ambition and intelligence led him to pursue a career in law. In the 1830s, he moved to New Salem, Illinois, where he worked various jobs before eventually entering politics. He served in the Illinois state legislature and taught himself law, passing the bar exam in 1836. His legal career flourished, and his reputation as a skilled orator and debater grew. In 1846, Lincoln was elected to the U.S. House of Representatives. However, his time in Congress was brief, and he returned to his law practice. But in 1854, the passage of the Kansas-Nebraska Act, allowing the expansion of slavery into new territories, ignited a fire within him. He re-entered the political arena with a renewed purpose, speaking out against slavery and emerging as a key leader in the newly formed Republican Party. Lincoln's early political career was marked by his strong stance on infrastructure improvements. As a Whig Party member, he supported policies that encouraged economic growth, including the construction of roads, canals, and railways to expand commerce and settlement. While serving in the Illinois state legislature, Lincoln developed his skills as a negotiator and leader. He played a key role in moving the state capital from Vandalia to Springfield, showcasing his political influence and ability to build coalitions. Lincoln's moral opposition to slavery was evident even in his early political years. He publicly criticized the institution during his time in the legislature, though he initially believed in a gradual approach to its abolition. His self-taught legal expertise allowed him to gain prominence as a lawyer. He handled a variety of cases, including those involving transportation, property disputes, and even defending enslaved individuals seeking freedom in court. 3. Dhe Lincoln Douglas DBGTS. One of the defining moments in Lincoln's rise to national prominence was the series of debates against Senator Stephen A. Douglas in 1858. These 7 debates, centered around the issue of slavery, showcased Lincoln's eloquence and moral clarity. Though he lost the Senate race, the debates catapulted him into the national spotlight, positioning him as a leading voice against slavery's expansion. Each debate took place in a different Illinois town, attracting massive crowds. People traveled from miles away to witness the intellectual battle between Lincoln and Douglas, often treating the events like grand public spectacles. Douglas, known as the Little Giant, was a masterful debater with a commanding presence. However, Lincoln's calm, logical arguments and moral conviction resonated with many voters who were uneasy about the spread of slavery. Lincoln repeatedly challenged Douglas's stance on popular sovereignty, which allowed states to decide whether to permit slavery. He argued that allowing slavery to expand into new territories was a fundamental moral wrong that threatened the ideals of democracy. In one of the most famous exchanges, Lincoln asked Douglas whether a territory could prohibit slavery before becoming a state. Douglas's response, later known as the Freeport Doctrine, alienated Southern Democrats, weakening his national standing. The debates were widely covered by newspapers across the country. While Illinois voters ultimately re-elected Douglas to the Senate, the debates elevated Lincoln's national reputation, paving the way for his successful presidential run in 1860. Despite losing the Senate race, Lincoln's speeches were later compiled and published in a book, further increasing his visibility. His arguments against slavery became a cornerstone of Republican ideology. Lincoln's emphasis on unifying principles, rather than party politics, was evident in these debates. He framed the issue of slavery as a test of the nation's commitment to its founding ideals, making his stance more appealing to a broader audience. The Lincoln-Douglas debates helped shift the national conversation on slavery, highlighting the growing divide between North and South. The stark ideological differences between the two candidates foreshadowed the coming Civil War. 4 and Civil War. In 1860, Lincoln was elected the 16th President of the United States, a victory that sent shockwaves through the South. Before he even took office, 7 Southern states seceded from the Union, forming the Confederate States of America. By April 1861, the nation was at war. The Civil War tested Lincoln like nothing before. He faced immense criticism, even from his own party. But his leadership during this period was nothing short of remarkable. He balanced political pressure, military strategies, and moral dilemmas, all while remaining steadfast in his mission to preserve the Union. His selection of top military leaders was critical to the Union's success. After multiple failed generals, he appointed Ulysses S. Grant as commanding general in 1864, a decision that ultimately turned the tide of the war. Lincoln skillfully used the telegraph to communicate with his generals in real time, making him one of the first wartime presidents to leverage technology for military strategy. The Civil War saw some of the bloodiest battles in American history, including Antietam, Gettysburg, and Vicksburg. Lincoln's leadership during these moments was crucial in maintaining morale and unity. Despite political opposition, Lincoln stood firm in his commitment to ending slavery, even when pressured to compromise. His ability to inspire through words was unmatched. His speeches, including the Gettysburg Address and his second inaugural address, provided a vision of national unity and healing. By 1865, the war was nearing its conclusion, and Lincoln began planning for Reconstruction, advocating for a lenient approach to reintegrate the Southern states. 5. Emancipation. One of Lincoln's most significant and courageous acts was the issuance of the Emancipation Proclamation on January 1, 1863. Declaring all slaves in Confederate states to be free, it transformed the war from a fight to preserve the Union into a battle for human freedom. While it did not immediately end slavery, it paved the way for the eventual passage of the 13th Amendment, which abolished slavery entirely. It encouraged thousands of African Americans to join the Union Army, bolstering the North's forces with nearly 200,000 black soldiers by the end of the war. Though the proclamation did not immediately free all enslaved people, it laid the foundation for the 13th Amendment, which ultimately abolished slavery in 1865. Lincoln faced political opposition from both abolitionists, who believed it did not go far enough, and conservatives, who feared it would alienate border states. The document reinforced Lincoln's legacy as the great emancipator, marking a turning point in American history and redefining the nation's commitment to liberty and equality. The Emancipation Proclamation was a carefully timed strategic move. Lincoln waited for a significant Union victory, specifically the Battle of Antietam, before issuing it to ensure it had maximum political and moral impact. It fundamentally shifted the goals of the Civil War. Initially framed as a war to preserve the Union, the proclamation made abolition a central objective, making it harder for the Confederacy to gain support. 6. The Gettysburg. Perhaps Lincoln's most famous speech, the Gettysburg Address, was delivered on November 19, 1863. In just 272 words, he redefined the war's purpose, emphasizing democracy, liberty, and national unity. His words, "government of the people, by the people, for the people," resonate to this day. The speech was given at the dedication of the Soldiers' National Cemetery in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, where one of the war's bloodiest battles had taken place. Lincoln followed a 2-hour speech by Edward Everett, yet his brief remarks became the most memorable. At the time, his speech received mixed reviews, but history has immortalized it as one of the greatest in American history. His message emphasized healing and a shared national identity, rather than revenge or division. The speech reinforced the idea that the Civil War was not just about the Union's survival, but about upholding the values of freedom and equality. Despite its brevity, the Gettysburg Address continues to be studied and recited as a model of eloquence and democratic ideals. Today, Lincoln's words are inscribed on monuments and taught in schools as a defining statement of American principles. 7. Re-election and final days. Despite the war's toll, Lincoln was re-elected in 1864. By early 1865, the Civil War was nearing its end, and Lincoln set his sights on reuniting the nation. However, tragedy struck on April 14, 1865, when John Wilkes Booth assassinated him at Ford's Theater in Washington. D.C. Lincoln succumbed to his wounds the following morning, becoming the first U.S. president to be assassinated. Lincoln's re-election was a significant victory, proving that the majority of Americans supported his leadership and vision. He chose Andrew Johnson as his running mate to help with post-war reconciliation, demonstrating his commitment to national unity. His second inaugural address, delivered in March 1865, emphasized malice toward none and charity for all, highlighting his desire for a peaceful reconstruction. Just days before his assassination, Lincoln toured Richmond, Virginia, the fallen Confederate capital, symbolizing the Union's triumph. Booth, a Confederate sympathizer, viewed Lincoln as a tyrant and plotted his assassination as an act of vengeance. 8. Legacy and impact. Lincoln's death was a profound loss to the nation, but his legacy endures. He is consistently ranked among the greatest U.S. presidents, credited with preserving the Union, ending slavery, and setting a moral precedent for future generations. His leadership during America's most divisive period showcased his resilience and unwavering commitment to justice. The Emancipation Proclamation and 13th Amendment ensured that his fight against slavery would be legally upheld. Lincoln's influence extends beyond the U.S., inspiring leaders worldwide who fight for democracy and human rights. His face is immortalized on Mount Rushmore and the Lincoln Memorial, symbolizing his lasting impact. Countless books, films, and speeches continue to analyze his leadership, decision-making, and personal struggles. Despite facing immense criticism and personal tragedy, Lincoln remained steadfast in his belief in a united and equal nation. His story serves as a timeless reminder that strong leadership, guided by integrity and compassion, can shape the destiny of a nation. 9. Lincoln's humble origins and self-education. Born in a log cabin in Kentucky, Abraham Lincoln's early life was marked by poverty and limited formal education. However, his relentless pursuit of knowledge led him to become a self-taught lawyer and politician. His ability to rise from humble beginnings to the highest office in the land remains one of the most inspiring aspects of his legacy. Lincoln had less than a year of formal schooling, yet he was an avid reader who borrowed books whenever possible. He read everything from the Bible to Shakespeare, using these texts to refine his language and critical thinking. To practice writing, he would often scribble words and solve math problems on wooden planks before scraping them clean. His stepmother, Sarah Bush Lincoln, encouraged his love of learning, recognizing his potential despite their meager circumstances. As a young man, he worked as a rail splitter, store clerk, and postmaster before pursuing a career in law. 10. The Gettysburg Address. A speech that defined a nation. Delivered in just over 2 minutes, Lincoln's Gettysburg Address became one of the most powerful speeches in American history. His words reaffirmed the nation's commitment to democracy and equality, shaping the course of U.S. history and solidifying his status as a visionary leader. The speech was given at the dedication of the Soldiers' National Cemetery, honoring those who had fallen in the Battle of Gettysburg. Lincoln framed the Civil War as a test of whether a nation conceived in liberty could endure the challenges of division. His use of the phrase 7 years ago referenced the founding of America, connecting the war to the ideals of 1776. Though brief, the speech was meticulously crafted, using poetic language and parallel structure for impact. Some newspapers criticized it at the time, but it has since become one of the most quoted speeches in history. Lincoln's journey was one of struggle, sacrifice, and triumph. His words and actions continue to shape the world we live in today. What do you think was Lincoln's greatest achievement? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more incredible stories from history. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring the past to understand the future.